On Monday, the 17th of March, an extraordinary full council meeting was called at Colchester Town Hall. And it certainly lived up to its billing. It was indeed extraordinary.
And the well-wishing from everyone, what appears to have ended up being the coming out of the first openly transgender councillor in Essex.
I don't accept at all the suggestion of some kind of carte blanche Trojan horse conspiracy. Just don't see that.
You don't see the concern? Is that not the point? Nor did the Trojans?
Hands up, all of you support the abolition of Colchester City Council.
Now, Sharon is busy with other projects. I'm back briefly to bring you this extraordinary meeting. And as I've just finished writing my book, it's now with the editor, so I have a little bit of spare time to come and bring you this. Now, for those of you that were begging me to write an exposé about everything that's happened in Council Watch, well, you won't be disappointed. All those things that we're unable to say in videos has gone into the book. It should be out end of April, all being well. I'll keep you posted. Anyway, here is what Carinna had to say for herself regarding devolution.
Devolution is said to enable more decisions to be taken at a more local level, thereby making it easier to tailor decisions to local needs and priorities, giving communities a greater say in decisions that affect them. Sounds good, doesn't it? The devil, however, is always in the details. UN researcher Sandy Adams has spent 2 decades looking closely at Agenda 2030's devilish details, which devolution ties into. This relinquishing of control by the government will give unprecedented power and control to the mayor of each region. Sadiq Khan provides perfect example. These mayors are part of the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, C40 cities supported by ICLEI, a global network of cities and local governments working to advance sustainable development, including climate action. The mayors will have significant powers to bypass Westminster and have carte blanche to implement changes to planning, housing, policing, including replacing police and crimes commissioners. Extensive research has led Sandy Adams to the view devolution is a Trojan horse to bring in higher carbon taxation, enforcement and possible climate lockdowns to meet net zero targets. No doubt some of you are giddy with excitement at that prospect, but for those of us who have researched net zero, our facial recognition systems are set to bull. It's nothing to do with climate or saving the planet, it's about what it always is, profit and power. As Sir Bob has pointed out, the public have not been involved in any shape or form. Council didn't seek devolution, and Councillor King stated that the broad view of many is of reluctant realism. If the policy has been set, that government have set the way ahead, most councillors are absolutely up for what we have to do. Make the most of it, least harm, most good. There is a clear presumption of public consent, or a complete lack of regard for it. If democracy is to be supported, then public consultation and consent is required. Councillors at Essex County Council, representing their own views, not that of their constituents, voted to cancel elections this year. That is unacceptable. Regardless of your personal views and opinions, devolution, once enthroned, will resist all attempts to be unseated. Destination, no return. A decision this big, which affects us all, should not be taken without full and proper consultation. Why is it that the so-called authorities are reluctant to get public feedback? Is it because we might answer incorrectly? It may well be that this council is simply being blindsided when it comes to the wholesale destruction of democratic processes. As Councillor King seems to suggest, you will follow instructions. But mightn't it be wise if, for once, you stop doing as you are told and act in the public good, a thing readily claimed but little evidence to show for? You may not have eyes to see the reduction in democratic process and top-down control this will bring, but you will be responsible for the consequences. We are watching. Thank you.
You're frank and distinctive in your views. We don't agree, do we? So I don't accept at all the suggestion of some kind of carte blanche Trojan horse conspiracy. Just don't see that in the world that we're in. And it goes to something that you've said repeatedly, which is around, in your view, and you're entitled to have it, about the fact there's a lack of accountability. And you've levelled that at this council, and in effect you're levelling it at others as well. So look, we have here scrutiny,
which you ignore,
audit,
which you ignore.
Regulators, ombudsmen,
Who have virtually no powers to do anything useful when it comes to public complaints.
and we have a very effective opposition holding the administration of the day to account.
Which you also ignore.
We have your say, where a public opportunity is provided in front of us all.
Yes, which you also ignore.
We've got a residence panel that's some 400 strong and very vocal.
Which you ignore.
We go out, all of us here in this chamber, to see our residents, and we do it collectively, senior officers and members.
Yes, so you can ignore them.
And of course we have elections. Now, none of that, inclusive of whatever new elections follow the mayor and the arrival of the new unitary authorities, none of that is anything other than an absolute accountability circus.
Now, I do agree with the circus, though it's hard to know which ones are the clowns, them for thinking that we believe they're accountable, or us for going along in the first place.
We are tested and challenged, so we should be.
You don't see the concern? Is that not the point? Nor did the Trojans. You're being paid by the government and funding relies on doing what the government says, so I do appreciate that we are going to have different views on that. My interest is, what drivers do you have to serve the will of the people or make decisions based on moral conscience and not just being pushed forward from agenda and bankruptcy difficulties that have been forced upon the council over many years? This is not democracy to cancel elections, and it is not democracy based on your view or on the spirit of things. Democracy involves consultation of the public. That has not been done. This needs to be voted as a no. Devolution should not go ahead. Thank you very much.
Rather concerning, Carinna had to spell out the pitfalls of a Trojan horse to the leader of Colchester Council. But there we go. Isn't it interesting? The people that do no research whatsoever always like to label those who have done decades of research as conspiracies. So, Councillor King, which part of Carinna's speech and Sandy Adams' research is a conspiracy? We're waiting, do let us know. Now, the idea of climate lockdowns possibly sounds a little preposterous, but sadly, it's not. It has been floated. Anyway, Sir Bob Russell was also there that evening.
Madam Mayor, this is the second time I've addressed full council on the subject of local government reorganisation. My hope is that most councillors are opposed, but they are not being given the chance to register this. Colchester in various forms has had self-governance since the granting of its first Royal Charter in 1189, 836 years ago. So, Madam Mayor, how many councillors support the abolition of Colchester City Council? Hands up, all of you support the abolition of Colchester City Council. Not one hand has gone up. That is now on the record. Nobody said they were in favour. I point out the English Devolution Bill has not yet been put before Parliament. Will there be county elections next year and elections to Colchester City Council? There are no answers to this. The unknowns are greater than the knowns. Page 8 refers to stronger community engagement and opportunities for neighbourhood empowerment, but the white paper proposals do the opposite. We also on page 8, 510 have Nolan principles, including openness. What openness when the councillors refused by a free information request to see the Grant Thornton report? A new unitary may not share the priorities of Colchester City Council, you bet, and the necessary attention to the needs of the communities that make up the City of Colchester may be diluted in any new unitary structure. There's a financial implication on page 13, significant costs, estimated, quote, to be several £1 million. Page 24D, council numbers, how many? If the white paper is being believed, you're going to be reduced by 2/3, the 500,000 population. Let me give these figures of comparison. Jersey, 103,000, Guernsey, 64,000, Isle of Man, 84,000, Gibraltar, 38,000. These are all places with parliaments. So why is it necessary to have a population of 500,000 when not one of the 32 London boroughs have a population of over 400,000? Thank you.
Ah, we love Sir Bob, as always, battling for the best of Colchester. Sadly, also falling on deaf ears, but we do appreciate the fact that he never gives in and always keeps standing up for what is right. The leader of the Conservative group in Witham also came to have his say.
Even worse, they seem prepared to drive this forward by sharing power or even ceding control to a Labour-led coalition in Southend and a bankrupt council in Thurrock. Of course, the Labour councillors say that they're being loyal to their party in supporting all of this, but they too are afraid of early elections. Essex did not need to be rushing forward on this, and it's a disgrace that the city and district councillors have literally been forced into their process without any consultation with their electorate. Because Essex County Council and their two allies have chosen to apply to become a Greater Essex Mayoral Combined Council Authority, the government consultation document has proposed that the Greater Essex project should be controlled by 4 people representing 350,000 inhabitants of Southend and Thurrock, whilst the 1.55 million inhabitants of the Essex County Council area will have only 3 representatives. Now, these 7 people will not actually decide what unitary councils will be put in place, but they will drive the timetable and probably will make sure that you do what this Greater Essex representative group think is best. And of course, the behaviour of the people closely involved is anti-democratic. They did not have to apply to create a mayoral combined council authority immediately. They could have consulted wise, they could have faced the electorate, and they should this May. And they could, over a reasonable period, have carried out a properly thought out project to create a small number of unitary councils to rationalise local government in Essex. The local councils should have had a choice.
Yes.
Colchester's the biggest council area in Essex, with a population of about 200,000. Are you really going to allow this to be done over your heads? You can and should comment on the consultation put out on Gov.uk, but you should also insist on having a Colchester City Councillor on the mayoral authority representative group. If you don't stamp your feet now, you will have no say later. Your voters deserve better, and they will not forgive you if you sleep your way through this.
No, we won't. And finally, there was this lady who hasn't come across as being overly impressed with Councillor King in the past.
Mr. King, I am very sorry to say that from my experience in the councils and the communications with you, you do not seem to be honest.
I was born in the cradle of democracy, Athens, which at that time was under a dictator. I was raised with democratic values by a family that fought for democracy. My uncle was tortured for standing up against the dictatorship and later served his country for years as a minister when democracy was restored. All my bloodline stood by him and supported his work all their life. So I must know a thing or two about democracy. Democracy comes from the Greek word demokratia. Anything that affects negatively the above is a threat to democracy. As Sir Bob Russell repeatedly said in here correctly, the proposed devolution is indeed a threat to democracy. The word democracy is not even mentioned in the document of this devolution. Dear councillors, the people do not just exist to put you in a position of power so that you can then do whatever you like. You are accountable for all your actions. You have been elected to represent at least the majority of the area that elected you, and you need to listen to all the people of your community, even if you don't agree or like their opinion or arguments. And certainly should not try to silence them when they point out misconducts, which is what I seem to have experienced in the last full council meeting.
Then Councillor King got up and said his bit on devolution, how he really didn't want it, but now it's here, let's grab it with both hands and embrace it. Those weren't his exact words, but close enough. Then Councillor Dundas said this.
I'm going to talk mainly about LGR, Local Government Reorganisation, this evening. We know it's linked to devolution and an Essex Mayor, but it's LGR which directly affects this council the most. It's not actually a vote on whether to support LGR. It's not a vote about whether we think abolishing this council is a good idea. It is not a vote about wider government local reorganisation across Essex or the nation. Sadly, none of the councillors here have any say over that matter. That decision has been taken out of our hands and dictated by the government. The reality is we have been forced onto the LGR bus at gunpoint by the government. And once we're on it, the doors are to be welded shut. Our decision is whether we sit back and relax and leave it on cruise control to wherever somebody else decides to take it, or we at least try and grab the wheel and nudge it in the direction of an end destination which works for us. In my opinion, we owe it to everyone to try and steer the bus which is why I will be supporting the recommendation this evening.
Now, whilst we'd love to bring you the leader of the Labour group, Councillor Young's contribution, you may remember from last year, she came up to me and said, "I don't want to be filmed." But since she hasn't come up to me and said, "I do want to be filmed," we didn't feel it appropriate to film. Instead, we went off for dinner. But no doubt she said something very similar to the others. Probably. I can't be bothered to go and listen. Though between you, me and the gatepost, I'm rather relieved I don't have to edit yet more footage. So basically, the choice is to walk slowly off the cliff or get in a bus and drive as fast as possible because you get control of the route. Well, they're going for let's drive off the cliff as fast as possible. In fairness, though, to the councillors, there's not a lot they can do at Colchester because it's already been sanctioned by Essex. Yes, dear Kevin and his cronies pushed it through as fast as physically possible. I don't know why, but I do get the overwhelming desire to burst into a Blues Brothers song every time I see Kevin, but don't worry, I will restrain myself. Anyway, do remember Kevin's face, because he's the one that's responsible. So when the council services get even worse, your council tax goes up even more, and we're all locked in a 15-minute city, do remember Kevin and his cronies who pushed it through. Now, one thing you don't need to remember about Kevin is that he used to work for the BBC. The reason you don't need to remember it is because he will tell you every 5 minutes.
One of the privileges of having been a local journalist all those years ago at BBC Essex.
Might I recommend, councillors, that you do get familiar with Sandy Adams' work, and then perhaps you won't be all in quite such a rush to drive us off a cliff. If every council in the land point blank refused to go through with devolution, one wonders what the government would actually be able to do about it. Sadly, they're all too busy admiring the new horse, rather than looking closely at the contents. Mind you, when the population as a whole seem incapable of seeing the system only exists because we all go along with it, we can hardly expect councillors to be the first to rebel, now can we? Now, before the evening got started, there was a very important announcement from the Mayor. Councillor Kirkby Taylor is transitioning and is now called Amy.
Amy, would you like to respond?
Just a very few words. I just want to say thank you, Mayor. It's not the transition we're here to discuss, so I will be brief. But I just want to say how pleased I am at the representatives who show their support in person and were well-wishing from everyone. And what appears to have ended up being the coming out of the first openly transgender councillor in Essex. I'm still the same councillor as I was, except perhaps more free to be fully myself. And I hope that going forward we'll be able to dispel many of the illusions regarding gender transition, including that it's just like flicking a switch. Like all social and indeed biological processes, it's gradual, complicated and messy, just like politics. Now, coming soon to Council Watch, Sharon has been working hard on an excellent video regarding the local planning and how much of the forced housing we're going to have to contend with. Also, Carinna hopes to interview Stephen Thomas. You may remember him from the interview he did with Karen Churchill regarding 5G. His court case happened last week and it was quite eventful. So she will be asking him to tell us exactly what has happened in this groundbreaking legal case. So until next time, take care.